everybody, my name's Ryan, the official host of Askreddit Tells, and I look forward to bringing you guys an episode of r/MaliciousCompliance. Before I do though, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit that subscribe button and that notification bell to stay up to date on all the latest videos. The pool and the game. I once worked a front desk at a public pool. It was awful, but one interaction stands out for both how malicious my compliance was and the fallout. Our swim teams had just launched and parents came to sign up kids for every single thing they could because it meant after-school activities and freedom. Yay! My responsibilities was the form. First, I had to help design the form because the design the city gave us, made by a woman who was making more than minimum wage as a pool desk caddy, was not enough for my boss, and my dumbass let her know I could make the MS Word sit up and do tricks for e-cookies. Once the form was approved, and by then I was taking proofs home to burn the catharsis, my job was to make sure that every single parent had signed the form and paid their fee. Enter Daddy T. His daughter was on swim team, and he had the charismatic grin and confident way of speaking that immediately put my alarm bells into danger, Will Robinson. He was a little too smiley, a little too happy, and vaguely familiar. There was something kind of off about him. I wasn't sure what it was, but it made me want to be as far under his radar as possible. Unfortunately, while his kid was signed up for swim team, he still needed to sign the form and pay for entry, which means I needed to interact with him. Most females, and not too few males, know that gazelle on the veldt feeling. Something is off. Something had the hair on your back of your neck standing on end. You don't know what it is, and the rules of social interaction demand you keep your mouth shut and play nice. This guy spends a few minutes of charismatic smiles. I had never seen teeth like that outside of Channel 10 news presenters, acting like he's having trouble reading the form. I designed the form over the course of multiple painful weeks, and know you would have to be severely brain damaged to have issues understanding it. My boss had me dumb it down to the point that a kindergarten student could know where to scribble and name approximation. And this guy's well-spoken and clean-cut, and he's got the sharpest and most familiar gaze I've ever seen. I cannot think of any reason for him to be this obtuse, honestly, and I begin to suspect he's hitting on me, which of multiple reasons has me creeped out by several orders of magnitude. I just want this guy to go away. Finally, after agonizing minutes of him struggling with a form that a 2-year-old could sign, he hands it back and says, still with that same confident, charismatic smile, "Read it to me." I was at a low point in my life. I hated every single thing about my life. I had untreated PTSD, and the thought of anyone hitting on me made me want to go scrub a layer of skin off. The realization that this guy had me pinned to a desk, I could not leave until he signed the form, which made me want to punch him. But I needed this job, and my boss would grind me into flour and then turn me into concession stand specials if I ever pretended to stand up for myself. So instead, I complied, and I shifted into happy customer service mode and read him the goddamn form. I summarized legalese, I dumbed things down from kindergartner to preschool, I did it all with the sweetest smile I could muster, and tried to be about as asexual as the desktop computer right next to the counter window. I made it a point to be the most cheerfully helpful person, and hoped that somehow this would translate to go the F away. And it worked. He signed, he left, I breathed a sigh of relief. Until next week, when the form had to be supplemented by the sign-in sheet, and the whole effing song and dance repeated itself. He asked me to read him the goddamn sign-in sheet, and I did with a smile. That couldn't have been more forced if he had a gun to my head. At this point, I was heaping lit coals on his head and practicing my obtuse as F face. I might be a captive audience, but I would be damned before I let him know he got me. I maliciously treated him like any other customer. I hated to see him arrive, and when he left, I cheered. And this went on for weeks, because every session, the boss would need a new form signed. And every session, that guy asked me to read it to him. And I managed it by channeling my inner robot. I even began highlighting his daughter's name and what kind of shit Dad forgets his daughter's name, and our interactions became a game. Him trying to get me refusing to be got, it almost felt like chess. Then it came time to distribute the swim team gear, and that brought a whole new set of forms, which meant the guy asked me to read every single one of them. And just when I'm contemplating leaping out of the nearest window while doing S-full bodywork silkwood decontam, sorry, not really familiar with that one, he suddenly meets eyes with me, and this layer of pretense I had never noticed drops away. He has tears, literal tears in his eyes, and he says, "Thank you, thank you, Thank you so much. See, the entire time I had been maliciously complying with him by being the best reader ever, I'd been struck by how familiar he looked, but I didn't ever really watch the news. I just sat and read books while my parents watched it instead, which is why I didn't recognize our local weatherman when he began bringing his daughter to swim practice. It also is why I didn't know why he had recently retired. He'd been diagnosed with a malignant brain tumor, you see, and they'd just finished a round of surgery and chemo to save his life, and they weren't sure it would actually work. His odds sucked. It really had been all over the news. They even gave him a really nice heartbreaking sound-off that I never watched because of my own depression and isolation. I found it on YouTube later. It's the kind of thing all of us would pray someone do in our memory. He thanked me because ever since his surgery, his ability to function had been compromised. He could mask most of the damage with his charisma and training, but usually could fake it till you make it with the best of them. He'd lost a lot of his capacity to read. It was a struggle he'd obviously never faced before, and it frustrated him that after all his college education and decades being the face of the local weather, he suddenly couldn't even read a basic form on his daughter's swim team. And he was so thankful he was crying that I was taking so much time out of my day to help him. And not just to help him, but to be so unpatronizing. I had treated him like he was normal. He said that I made him feel sort of whole again. He made every effort to make it clear he was genuinely, sincerely grateful for how helpful I had been. And I am suddenly reviewing every insult I thought about him. Every time I questioned his mental capacity or quality as a parent, he was so low that what I meant as a mockery and a punishment was, to him, a gift. I made him feel normal. These aren't words for that kind of shame. I thought it was a game. I really did. People still talk about how he touched lives, and I know he touched mine. My boss wanted me to train my replacement, but I didn't work there anymore. Hey Reddit, not 100% sure this counts, but I wanted to share my story. I used to work in a grocery store back in 2016. I was 16 or 17 at the time, and I don't work retail anymore. But I wanted to share this story as I still remember it to this day. It was a pretty normal night right before the end of my shift. I was one of the few closers at my store, so it was just me, my supervisor, and a cashier. I worked the self-checkout customer service desk. My supervisor had just collected the tills and was in the back counting. And I was starting my rounds to take back the non-perishables that were left at the registers. I also might add that our store had terrible camera placement. Basically, it showed all the registers and the supervisor's office door, which is where the safe was. This is important later. After putting up all the items that were left at the registers, I did my final checks of the store to make sure there were no misplaced or damaged items on the floor. I find a case of beer that was leaking in our beer/wine section, and since I wasn't sure how damaged the bottom of the cardboard was, because I didn't want to have to drag it to the front so I could inform my supervisor about it and the damaged item before taking it to the back, we kept carts full of damaged items to be taken out by the morning's crew. Since the supervisor's office is locked while they are counting the tills, I call over to her and let her know that there was a damaged case of beer and I was taking it to the back. She responds with an absent, "Okay, sounds good." So I tried to take it to the back place with the rest of the damaged items and go back to the front to see if there's anything else my supervisor needs me to do before I clock out. There isn't. Next couple of days are fine as I finish up the week and wait for the next week's schedule to be posted, and I find out that I'm not scheduled for next week. I figure there must have been a mistake as there was someone working at the same grocery store who shared my first name. I go up to my manager's office and ask him about the schedule and why I wasn't scheduled. He responds with a, "Oh, my bad, I forgot to tell you that you're suspended until the investigation's over. By the way, you can train your replacement today on self-checkout/customer service desk." Me, confused and annoyed at the moment, don't really pay attention to the second part of his comment and ask him what he's talking about. "We caught you stealing that case of beer that you took to the back, and until the police investigation is complete, you won't be working here anymore. Please turn in your uniform, name tag, and badge." I'm furious, but I decide that I would just go with a bit of MC in this situation. "Well, boss man, I took out the damaged case of beer to the back to be thrown out in the morning as per procedure, but since I won't be working here anymore, I guess you'll just have to find someone else to train my replacement, since I clearly can't be trusted. I was the only person who could train someone for the customer service desk other than him." So his jaw dropped. The look on his face was priceless as I took off my uniform and handed him my name tag, and override card. I then proceeded to walk out, get in my car, and drive home. About 2 years later, I joined the army and I'm going for a job that required a security clearance. Guess what shows up? The suspension with an unfinished police report and the tapes from the security camera. I sit there with my interviewer as we watch the tape together, clearly showing that I didn't steal anything. Needless to say, I was approved for my clearance. I ask if I can get a copy of the tape, and my interviewer agrees. It took 2 years, but I finally had the evidence I needed to sue for wrongful termination. But as the time is well over the statute of limitation, I am unable to actually do anything about it. Either way, I decide to go pay my old workplace a visit over my Christmas block, leave, and a couple of people recognize me, including my old boss. He tells me that thieves like me aren't welcome in his store, and that I need to leave or he'd be calling the police. I told him to call him, and that this claim would surely hold up when I showed him the copy of the video footage of me stealing. The store had one of my favorite muffins, and honestly, I really wanted one since they're only made there. The police got called and did nothing, and I got 3 muffins free of charge, thanks to my favorite supervisor. Worth it. And that, unfortunately, brings us to the end of today's video. That's alright though, we'll be back up and ready, posting all kinds of new stuff before you know it. As always, my name's Ryan from Askreddit Tells, and if you liked this video, I'd really appreciate it if you checked out some of our other stuff and maybe even subscribed. Be sure to leave a like and comment to show your support for the channel, and check out the playlist we have constructed if you got nothing better going on. I will see you guys all tomorrow, and I hope you have a good evening, and a good night.